1, go!
This is the video about the last unsolved problem of climbing ropes. It's a deep dive into the science behind rope development.
In and out, in and out.
And testing. Including the microscopic world of rope failures. Some new exciting technologies.
You do not load the cut-resistant fiber.
And me.
Any last words?
Volunteering to do some human testing.
Nowadays, ropes are almost unbreakable.
So that's good for your fear of falling. But what we are about to talk might not be so great.
Yeah.
This is a standard test of climbing ropes. A steel mass is dropped from almost 5 meters, causing the forces more than double of what you can achieve in real life.
Because it's unbreakable if you try to literally break it. If you pull on it, there is almost no chance that it will snap.
No.
But
First your back will snap.
But when we talk about cutting, I was surprised that till this day there is no standard for how cut-resistant rope needs to be, and it's not that hard to cut the rope under tension.
Which means that there is no standardized test which would measure how good the rope is against situations like this.
I mean, it's not like no one worked on it. It's a really difficult topic, and a lot of institutes, manufacturers, notified bodies and laboratories worked on that.
Now, before we start breaking ropes, a quick detour to the 19th century. The early days of climbing. With the best advice you would get back then is that the leader must not fall. They used hemp ropes made for agricultural purposes that had almost no stretch. So if you fall, you either gonna break your rope or your ribs.
Shall we go climbing? I brought some ropes, brand new. Smells organic.
Want to take a whip on it?
Are we doing some test falls on this?
Not sure you want to.
Now, as you can imagine, these agricultural ropes didn't have much quality control, and that's why in 1862, these serious-looking Swiss men decided to bring Swiss quality to climbing ropes. And here Mammut was born, a year later followed by a German company Ederlid, and multiple decades of craziest climbing. Yeah. Now, in 1935, everything started to change when the chemical company DuPont invented nylon, world's first synthetic fiber.
Yes, boys, this is it. This is a synthetic fiber.
You mean we make cloth out of that?
Yes, we do.
Actually, to make nylon, you only need 2 components: acid and this thing that I cannot pronounce.
So then I'm going to reach in here, and where the interface is, I'm going to pull out some nylon. So here we go. Now we'll see how much nylon we can pull out of this thing. There's a meter or so. 2. So on a large scale, this is done not with a whole bunch of people doing this, of course, but...
By the way, take a guess. Who was the first user of such great material?
Certainly is a long time since we've seen legs looking like that. Perhaps I should say stockings looking like that.
That's right, women. They loved nylon stockings so much that they gathered in crowds.
Real nylon and fully fashioned. Very nice to see again from any angle.
And then World War II broke out. Due to the conflict with Japan, United States lost access to silk suppliers. So military needed to transition all silk products like parachutes to nylon, which greatly accelerated development of nylon, but women felt the shortages. But no worries, you can always paint legs to look like they have stockings. Turned out to be a great business. After the war, nylon found its way to Europe, and Mammut launched the first rope which can actually stretch. But a year later, Ederlit invented the Kernmantle Technology, which was an even bigger revolution.
It's a little bit funny because Aramid invented the Kernmantle rope. The owner of Mammut was not really convinced by the new concept. He wanted to stick to the twisted one. And just a couple years later, Mammut also launched the first Kernmantle rope.
So very quickly realized that, oh, that's actually a good idea.
Yes.
Kernmantle ropes are made out of two components: the core strands that are twisted and the sheath which is braided around to protect the core.
Okay.
And keep going, keep going.
A very expensive rope with my hourly pay. Okay, so you have two different types of spools here. The red one run into this direction.
By red we mean this.
Yeah, the red one go counterclockwise and the yellow ones clockwise, and they always go in and out in order to create the braid.
It's actually quite cool to see this.
If you look at the core strands from modern climbing ropes, they also have this kind of twist.
This is like exactly the same as this.
In theory, yes.
Why is there many core strands and not one big core strand twisted together?
That's a good question.
We have cores that go in S direction, that are twisted in one direction, and other cores that are twisted in the other direction.
This is something that is a reoccurring theme in the twines that are used in a rope, that you always differ the direction to kind of work against the natural motion of twisting.
Now, back in the days when the military was testing parachute deployment, we noticed that forces higher than 15 G can result in injuries to the spine and neck. And since climbers also don't like breaking their backs, they decided to borrow that limit.
When the UIAA standard was developed, the developers back in the day said it's impossible to reach the limit of the 12 kilonewtons.
That is interesting that at first we came up with the standard that nobody could achieve, and then only later we managed to achieve it.
Okay, in 1964 we got the first rope that is certified to not break our backs, and now 80 years later and we're still using the same Kernmantle technology, which is kind of impressive. But what's not impressive, that till this day our ropes still have the last unsolved problem, that they are not that hard to cut, especially when they are under tension.
Give me some sharp-ish objects.
Sharp edge object.
Sharp-ish.
Sharpish.
Oh, very good. Boop. But that's so tiny.
This is dangerous.
Yeah.
Bringing a knife and a file.
So we have a file, which is, it's a metal file. We have a knife, and this thing...
Ene minimistes, rappelt in der Kiste.
No, I will start with a dull one. And if it turns out to be too much work, I will go to sharper ones.
So, at first we pulled the rope to 80 kilograms. This imitates a climber simply hanging on the rope.
Oh wow, it's not that hard to cut. And yeah, this file is not that sharp. Kind of scary. No show.
Not as spectacular as
Wait,
you'd hoped.
what I want to actually now try. Okay, it's significantly harder.
Yeah, if it's like completely relaxed, huh?
You got really red, dude.
I just wanted to see how much harder it is to cut not under load. So let's try what happens at 3.5 kilonewtons. It's a hard fall load.
Let's go.
Do I need the safety something? You think I'm gonna die at 3.5? Have you tried this before?
No.
Are you brave enough? Is the question now.
My cameraman is going away. You ready?
Yeah.
I'm not. It said something. It wants to talk. It's adjusting to the rate.
It's warm.
Wow,
Oh,
I'm
no.
barely doing anything.
Oh, now be careful with your fingers. I think it'll...
Wow, I barely touched it. So as you can see, tension in ropes plays a big role in cut resistance. And now some of you might be thinking, why can't we simply add some kind of material in the rope which would make them much harder to cut? Well, we do have ropes that are made out of Dyneema and Aramid. Okay, so this is a glacier cord?
Yes,
And where is it used?
It's for securing yourself against falls in a crevasse. If you would fall in, there you have covered with snow, so the snow kind of dampens the fall. So this is why you don't need the dynamics in this type of rope.
This is a shoelace.
Yeah, it's 6 millimeter.
Is this Dyneema or?
Yeah, on the inside it's a Dyneema, on the outside it's a polyester Aramid.
And these glacier people came up with a thought that it's okay to fall on this?
Well, because you don't fall.
Well, then don't use it.
So we put this cord in a drop tower with relatively small amount of slack, and we wanted to see what happens when you apply a dynamic load on the super strong yet stiff material.
Oh my god, it's always so loud in here. What was the force?
7.9.
So what force do you expect out of a dynamic rope on the same fall?
I would say around 3.6, 3.7.
3.5.
So 3.6 and 3.5.
Want to play some bets?
What's your guess?
3 kilonewtons.
Okay.
He's paying for dinner.
No, the closest one pays for the dinner.
Wait. Okay,
so I'm paying for the dinner. So, as you can see, material which is rated for 14 kilonewtons for a static scenario broke at around 8 in a dynamic drop, which is a peculiar observation on itself. But that also shows that incorporating these super strong materials into dynamic climbing ropes is not that trivial. Now, the second problem comes from saying that if you can't measure it, you can't improve it. And turns out that measuring cut resistance in climbing ropes is a very tricky topic.
In 2002, UIAA proposed a test similar to a standard drop test, but here the rope was falling over a sharp edge.
But the problem was the values that we got, or the values that they got back then, were just inconsistent within the test, but also between different institutes and laboratories.
So 2 years later, the test was withdrawn. And since then, a lot of different tests were tried out by different organizations, and Mammut also had their own idea.
It's a pendulum swing with a sharp knife is dropped onto a preloaded rope.
So instead of the rope falling with the weight, you had the rope static and the knife was falling.
Exactly, the knife was falling and you measured how high the knife came after the cutting, and then you could calculate how much energy was necessary to cut it. So we worked 3 years on that, but at some point we also had to say, yeah, it's giving inconsistent values. Opened more questions than answers.
Now, the common problem with many of those tests were that either the forces were unrealistically high or the dynamics in those tests introduced too much variability, meaning when the rope is falling on some kind of sharp edge, it will never fall in exactly the same way.
So in 2018, Ederlit proposed a slightly different approach, where they eliminated all the dynamics. Here the rope is tensioned to desired load, and then the disc spins and cuts the rope. And the machine is measuring how far the disc had to travel to cut the rope.
In 2015, there was an accident where 2 people were lowered on a single 8.7 millimeter rope. The rope moved a bit over a sharp edge and it was cut.
And since this test reproduces the accident scenario really well, Ederlit managed to answer a very important question. What had a bigger impact in the accident? The fact that they used super thin 8.7mm rope, or that they were lowered 2 people at the same time? First, we loaded 2 different ropes to 160 kilograms, imitating 2 climbers hanging. And even though ropes had different diameters, the cut resistance was very similar. But then we took the same rope, but loaded it with different load. And this time the difference was much bigger. This shows that the load on the rope has a much bigger impact than the diameter of the rope. So a great takeaway would be to avoid practices where 2 people are hanging on one strand of the rope, but at the same time 160 kilos that we used is not that much. When we start talking about dynamic scenarios, their forces can reach up to 4 kilonewtons. And also the cutting patterns become way more complicated. Recently there was a very interesting paper published which took ropes that were cut and looked through the microscope. And what we found was 4 dominating patterns. The first one was a clean cut. The second one was a tiered cut, as if you would be cutting with a dull knife. Then we found some mushrooms. These happened from high-speed fiber overload. And lastly, molten fibers. And then we looked what patterns we will find in ropes cut by different tests. Starting with Ederlit disc, which produced a lot of clean cuts, but also a lot of tiered cuts. This probably happened because the disc actually has these small teeth. Next, we looked into the old Mammut test, and this one was pretty much dominated by mushrooms. And the possible explanation is because the rope was tensioned to unrealistically high forces. And of course I had the question, why didn't we use more realistic loads on this test?
When we lowered the preloading to 3-4 kilonewton, then some of these ropes have not been able to be cut. We were not able to compare the results.
So you wanted that all the ropes will be cut, but then you can measure how much it takes.
Yeah, that was the difficulty of the test. Yeah.
Okay, next we looked into the old UIA test, and here we found a lot of mushrooms, but also a lot of molten fibers. And finally, we simulated a realistic dynamic scenario where the rope was running across a sharp granite edge. And also we compared the patterns in different parts of the rope, like the sheath versus the core, and after all the analysis, the study concluded that no test method can fully replicate the complex braking mechanism observed during an accident simulation. So yeah, a deep rabbit hole, but this brings us to the best part of this video.
Ah, fancy, this thing can go up and down.
Oh yeah?
You don't like walking ladders, so you made the machine which goes up and down.
Dano was climbing this ladder up and down millions of times.
It kind of feels that it grabs the edge, but it's not like super cut. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't even think outside that this is an issue.
There are several edges out in the mountains that are much sharper than this. Yeah? Mm-hmm. So if we do the tests then, you will be afraid of climbing after it. Here you have this 45-degree surface.
So it's like 90 degrees and then 45 degrees cut.
Yes, cut, yeah.
So it's not actually like a pointy edge. It's relatively rounded edge, but the granite has this roughness to it.
Yes.
I would say. So let me guess, the reason we cannot make this standardized is because it's impossible to make this granite edge standard.
Yeah, so this test setup is not something that aims to be a standardized test method that needs to be reproducible in different places. So you need the exact same granite edge in 10 different places. This was not the goal. It was for us in the development to learn how different constructions are behaving, thicker diameters, thinner diameters, different sheath constructions, just to get an insight for that.
Okay, ready?
3, 2, 1, and go! Go!
Well, I wouldn't want to be a climber in this case.
quiet cut.
Quiet cut. That's a quiet cut.
3, 2, 1, go!
Wow, and this one strand holding on.
Yeah, but it's just being pulled out.
It's not holding anymore, huh?
So you can see where the core strands were cut. We have one left that was completely pulled out. This is the original end. And you can see the hole that remains.
And how hard is the fall? What's the force to the climber?
I would say it's a realistic fall with realistic forces, 3 kilonewtons or 300 kilograms.
All right, our first rope was failing very easily, so we changed to a thicker one.
All right. 3, 2, 1, go!
It's crazy because it looks like a tiny fall and a tiny swing, and it went.
Yesterday, we basically spent the day breaking ropes, and yeah, I wouldn't have go straight to the rock to climb because no.
Wasn't the goal to be the opposite?
Yeah. Well, as a climber, it kind of scares you to see this a little. Yeah, that's true.
All right, moving to even thicker 9.9 millimeters rope.
1, go! Yes!
Wow, that's quick.
You can see the different types of cutting mechanisms here. First, the shaft is being cut, and then it kind of looks like the rope is remaining on one position, but the load is pulling more and more.
Yeah, you see the cords breaking one after each other.
Yeah.
So it's 0.3 seconds for the whole rope to break. It's quick. That's very cool.
Ooh, exciting.
Very
so,
cool.
shall we do...
Okay, let's do the thickest rope on our list.
3, 2, 1, go!
So I don't know who still buys such monster ropes, but I guess here you go. That's for your fear of falling. The slow motion torture. So yeah, subscribe, and I promise that the rope is not gonna break. Come on, the button is down there. We need you. Thank you for subscribing. You're the best.
So, as you can see, while adding more material and making the ropes thicker does help a little bit, it's not by much. And obviously Mammut wouldn't be inviting me just to show how all the ropes are failing. They actually been working on something new. So this is the new rope.
Yes.
So it has an extra something inside. Oh, look at that. I would not even be able to guess that it's made out of different material. It feels also kind of fabric soft. I was thinking I will open this and we'll find some metal inside.
No, it's textile. And the key component is the intermediate sheath here. You have here an intermediate sheath that protects the core.
So normally ropes have sheath and then they have the core. And this rope has one more sheath, you can say.
This intermediate sheath is made of high strength Aramid fibers that have an overlength. So with this overlength, they are free from tension.
This is actually very interesting. While Aramid is a super strong material commonly used in safety equipment, like cut-resistant gloves or bulletproof vests, however, as we've seen before, Aramid is very stiff. So to solve this, they needed to create a design where nylon in the rope would stretch and absorb the impact, but Aramid would stay without load.
This is the so-called, we call it the hybrid yarn. What is made of two different fibers.
So this middle layer is not only Aramid, it's a hybrid.
Yes.
Okay.
And you see that there is one with a longer yarn inside.
Yeah.
And one is shorter.
Okay, so there is
types
two
of yarns.
thin strings. One is completely stretched now, and the other one is curled around the stretched one.
Yes, this is the one with the overlength. If you load it now, you do not load the cut-resistant fiber.
Okay.
To illustrate, this is an elongation curve of a pure nylon, and this is a hybrid yarn without an overlength. So not good. But by introducing an overlength in Aramid, we managed to achieve a curve like this.
So basically, during the fall, you probably are not even gonna feel any difference on this rope.
No.
Nice. And why is it hybrid inside? Why is it not all Aramid?
It will not be held in position, so you need any carrier because you have the overlength anywhere, and if you move with the rope all the time, maybe it changes the place.
That's a very smart design. Now it makes more sense. How does it come back after load? Because otherwise you would stretch and then the middle layer would move somewhere. But since you have some nylon in it, it will reset the middle layer probably as well.
Yes, of course.
Now, as a fun fact, this rope has only 4% of its weight in Aramid. So let's see what that does.
Ready to launch. 3, 2, 1, go!
Whoa. But the core, it's only hanging on the core strands.
Yes. Middle sheath is offering a protective layer.
So it's not like the middle layer is indestructible.
No, of course not.
But the core strands barely got any damage.
Yeah.
Just a tiny bit.
Yeah.
So while this middle layer was adding extra protection for the rope, it was still eventually cut. Right outside of the camera frame. Sorry.
3, 2, 1, go.
It's about, does it hold in this scenario or not? So we are kind of deducting from this test setup that it does perform significantly better than normal inline rope with the same diameter. So if you're looking in keeping the same weight of the rope and same handle, you will get an extra safety margin on top. But the thing is something that you need to be aware of. Just because you have an extra safety margin doesn't mean it will absolutely not break.
Oh,
no?
No. So a very interesting design indeed. And while I'm still waiting for completely indestructible middle layer, there was something that had actually even bigger impact on the cut resistance.
So instead of having the rope safely attached to the beam, I came up with a brilliant idea to attach it to myself.
No, I'm curious if it will break when I will belay.
Yeah, no, I think it won't. Yeah, because dynamics also play a big role.
But let's say I panic as a belayer and I take really hard. Will it break?
That we will find out.
So let's say, what I'm afraid is that I will jump and I will end up there. And then it will break and I will fall.
Yeah, that would suck.
Ciao, it was nice to meet you.
Any last words?
For science?
Okay, Arno. I see some anxiety sweat
Let's
pearls. Go. Okay.
3, 2, 1.
So my plan was to take during the fall and at the same time go down to cause as hard catch as possible. However, since I was belaying with a tube, raising my hand up was causing the rope to slide through the belay device way too much. But the rope was still damaged. Now for the second attempt, I decided to not take and just go down.
Okay, so for the climber, it was a force of 2.98, so almost 3 kilonewtons.
In our previous experiments, where we had the rope attached to the beam, ropes were breaking at slightly higher forces. So to match that, since now we have a little bit of extra rope, we decided to slightly increase the fall.
2, 1.
Yeah, you were too fast, Ben.
So yeah, I've heard that dying is against YouTube monetization policy, especially in front of so many cameras, so I'm glad I didn't. But since my timing was meh, let's try again.
2, 1.
Yes!
I guess my climber did not survive.
That was beautiful, Ben.
Where is my climber? It actually broke not on the first impact. I felt like I caught it and then it was sliding and then it broke. And then I had like tuck and puck. Nice. Okay, now we tried the same, but I will belay softly.
Ready?
Yep.
3, 2, 1.
Now for the soft catch, since I was belaying with the tube, my idea was to simply let the rope slide through it. However, my timing was meh again. I couldn't see the climber, okay? Don't judge.
Huh, nothing. That's so cool. So first let me give you the force. 2.3. So
2.3.
It's really nothing, huh? Nothing. Nothing.
What?
Not even abrasion.
What?
Yeah.
Absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
No.
We're at the wrong side.
It burned. That is crazy. It just burned a little bit on top. But I would still climb with this rope.
Yeah, totally.
I was almost sure that it will not break, but I was not expecting the difference to be that drastic.
Yeah.
Alright, so far we explored the dangers of sharp rocks, but another massive danger comes from sharp climbing equipment.
This is, for example, in the climbing gym, in the first Carabiner.
Oh, the very, very first quick draw in the gym was sharp and it cut somebody's rope.
Yeah.
The rope went like this in the Carabiner and then up, as you can imagine, in the climbing gym. And so it sharpened it in a really bad way. And for many, many years, maybe no one dropped in the first quick draw. Also, no one inspected it in the gym. The person fell into the first quick draw and then the rope ripped.
So what is this test?
Well, we're cutting ropes once again. This time we're dropping the ropes over a sharp carabiner. It has a very sharp edge, actually.
Yeah.
You would notice if something like this would be out there. 3, 2, 1, go!
You will have to see this.
Yeah, it looks, again, very violent.
Oh my God, that was not something I was expecting.
3, 2, 1, go!
I think bouldering it is. Oh, it's so scary how it goes like for like 2-3 seconds. It goes zoom and then just bombs.
It explodes.
Now, assuming the rope would not fail, this test was set to produce around 3.5 kilonewtons to the climber. So again, imitating real-life scenarios.
Oh my God, that happened so fast.
It's not getting any better, right? It's still terrifying.
Is it for you?
Yeah, it's shocking, honestly. Like, it's such a violent explosion. Horrible. Gives me nightmares.
And
9.8 we go.
Wow, the rope, it survived, but it's...
Yeah, it's pretty damaged. Wait, I want to show you something. Because of this impact, you create so much friction that actually this is like a part that melted. It's like a little cap.
So this thing melted on the carabiner, and then the rest of the rope was just going over it. So it kind of created a protective piece of material that the rest of the rope was sliding over.
This rope, we know that it can break, but sometimes it can also hold. So it's like a little bit of a gamble.
All right, next 10.2 millimeter monster rope. So yeah, sometimes more is better. But in case you want less, here is a new construction rope.
First it cut through the outer sheath. It failed here, but the sharp edge was traveling along the longitudinal side of the rope and kept on damaging. But there, the middle sheath was protecting the coarse strand, so this was good.
The craziest thing that this is fabric, this is textile, and we are falling on it, and it's holding and comes back. Like this coming back is always the most fascinating thing for me. If you load it and you put it on the table and you see it's shrinking back slowly.
It lives, huh?
You should name your rope.
You can write a comment what name you give to your rope.
We're curious.
The name with the most upvotes will get a free rope from Mammut.
Is that the case?
That'd be cool. Just make that happen.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's that. So for whom is this rope?
For a sailor.
For sailor.
With a nice wooden boat. Yeah, it matches then.
We are talking not about this.
We're talking about this rope.
So should I buy this rope for going to the crags, or it has a different intent? For whom this rope is actually?
Mountaineering, ridge climbing, multi-pitch climbing, where there are a lot of sharp edges.
Also maybe ice climbing is where you maneuver with a lot of sharp tools already.
Single pitch climbing, sport climbing, trad climbing, do you really need it? I would say, hey, it depends on the route.
Why wouldn't I want this in a crag? Will it last less long? Is it less durable since the sheath is, you said, a little bit thinner?
Yeah, so you have a little bit less sheath since we had to make room for the Aramid sheath.
Did you run this through your abrasion testing machine?
Yes, we saw a decrease. But you know, in German we have the saying that you want the eierlegende Wollmilchsau. So you want a pig that has wool and is also laying eggs. So you want an overall package that does not exist. So this is kind of the thing with ropes. You can't have it all at once.
So that was a journey, which makes me really curious to see what's coming next and what rope names you're gonna put down in the comments. And also, making this video took me over 3 months, many locations and many smart humans helping me. So probably not the best strategy for a successful YouTube business. And it would definitely not be possible without kind people supporting me on my Patreon and in other means. So I sent a lot of low gravity days to these kind of people. These kind of kind people. And thank you for watching and see you in the next one.